They made my 83-year-old grandma sit on the floor at Christmas while they toasted champagne. I didn't say a word, but I swore I'd never forget it. This story means a lot to me, and if you stay with me till the end, I think it might mean something to you too. If it does, you can always show your support by liking, subscribing, or sharing it with someone who loves their grandma like I do. My name is Hannah Bell. I'm 26, a product designer by trade, but that night, Christmas Eve, I felt like something else entirely. Maybe a granddaughter on the edge of snapping. We were at my Aunt Donna's house in Charleston. Big fancy place with white marble countertops, a tree that looked like it came out of a catalog, and about 16 matching gold-rimmed wine glasses arranged on a tray like soldiers. Everything about the place screamed money, but not warmth. Not home. I had brought my grandma, Lucille. She's 83 now, but she raised me since I was 7. My mom died young, and Grandma gave up everything to take me in. She never had much, but she gave everything she had to me. She's the kind of woman who still folds plastic bags and saves buttons off old coats. She doesn't ask for much and never complains. The whole family was there. Aunt Donna, with her giant earrings and her "Merry Christmas, darling" voice. My cousins, Carson and Elise, dressed like they were going to a gala instead of a family dinner. Everyone was sipping champagne, sitting on high-backed velvet chairs, or lounging across tufted leather ottomans. Except Grandma. No one offered her a seat. I watched as she looked around, a little unsure, then slowly lowered herself down onto the floor near the tree. Like a guest no one noticed. She smiled like it didn't bother her, but I saw the small wince in her eyes as she sat. No one moved. No one even blinked. I stood there frozen. My heart was pounding in my ears. I wanted to shout, flip the table, throw a glass against the wall. But I just stood there, smiling like the rest of them, because I didn't want to make a scene. Because that's what they'd expect from Hannah from nowhere. Because I was too angry to speak. Later that night, back at our little apartment, I helped her into bed. She groaned softly as I lifted her feet up onto the mattress. I took off her shoes and pulled the quilt over her legs. She looked at me and said, "They didn't mean anything by it, baby. Don't get upset." But I wasn't just upset. I was done. That night I stood by the window while she slept, watching snow fall under the streetlight. And I made a quiet promise. She would never be made to feel small again. Not by them. Not by anyone. I was 7 when my mom died. One day she was there, folding laundry and singing along to the radio, and the next she was gone. A car crash. No warning, no goodbye. It felt like the world cracked open under my feet. Everyone expected I'd be sent to live with my Aunt Donna, my mom's older sister. She had the big house, the bank account, the shiny new car. But Donna said she wasn't equipped to raise a child. That's how she put it. Cold and clean, like she was returning a wrong Amazon delivery. So I went to live with Grandma Lucille in a little house outside of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen that always smelled like sweet tea and cornbread. Nothing fancy, but it was home. It felt like love. Grandma worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood. She cleaned houses during the day and worked nights at a diner off the highway. I remember her coming home with tired feet and a smile just for me. Some days she could barely keep her eyes open, but she always made time to help with homework or braid my hair. She made me feel safe, like I hadn't lost everything, and she never once complained. Not when we couldn't afford new shoes, not when the roof leaked, not when I cried myself to sleep missing my mom. Meanwhile, Aunt Donna lived like royalty. New granite countertops every 2 years, spa weekends, and the way she talked to Grandma at family gathering, always with a fake smile and a tone that made my skin crawl. Like she was being polite to a waitress she secretly hated. The worst was the house. It was supposed to be Grandma's. My grandfather had written it into his original will. I saw a copy once, hidden in a dusty drawer in our living room. But somehow, after he passed, Aunt Donna ended up with. She said it was what Daddy would have wanted, that Grandma couldn't manage a property that big. Lucille never fought her, never argued. She just packed her things and left like it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing. For years I thought that was just the way families worked. Some people take, some people give. But that Christmas night, seeing Grandma on the floor like she didn't belong, something shifted. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't new. They'd been treating her like furniture for years, and I wasn't going to let it go on. Back in my apartment, I couldn't stop seeing it. Grandma sitting cross-legged on the cold hardwood floor, smiling like she belonged there while everyone else sipped champagne in padded chairs. It looped in my head like a scene from a movie I didn't want to watch. I went about my usual routine, making tea, checking emails, but everything felt distant, like I was walking underwater. That night, I was folding laundry when I saw it, the quilt. It was old, the kind that had been mended so many times it felt more patched than fabric. A crazy mix of patterns, stripes, florals, faded denim, and yet it all worked together somehow. Grandma had sewn it years ago from scraps left over from clothes she used to make for me. Each square had a story. The blue plaid was from one of my first school dresses. The yellow one with daisies? That was a baby blanket she made when I had the flu for a week straight. I ran my hand over the stitches, each one done by hand. Neat, tight, careful. That's when the idea hit me. She used to say, "We don't throw away something just because it's worn. We fix it. That's where the soul is." I stared at that quilt like it was speaking, and maybe in a way it was not just comfort, not just nostalgia, but a map, a direction, something that had always been there, waiting for me to notice. I pulled out my old sketch pad and started drawing. At first it was simple, pillows with patchwork covers, then robes, then aprons. Patterns that felt warm, homey, real. Not fake luxury, but something honest. Something that felt like Lucille. That night I barely slept. My brain wouldn't stop buzzing. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw stitches. The next day, I started researching fabrics, dye sources, how to manufacture small runs. I had no background in textiles, but I had Google, a sketch pad, and a fire in my chest that wouldn't quit. I spent nights and weekends buried in tutorials, drawing patterns, calling fabric suppliers, watching old ladies on YouTube explain how to bind edges by hand. I ordered swatches. I built a vision board. I even started experimenting with embroidery. Sloppy at first, but getting better with each attempt. I didn't tell Grandma. Not yet. I wasn't ready. This wasn't a business idea. It was a promise. Every hour I spent bent over fabric or reading about seams was a brick in something I was building, something solid. A way to show her, and maybe the world, that the woman they ignored at Christmas was worth something priceless. I didn't know if it would work, but for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I needed to do. 6 months after that Christmas, I quit my job. It wasn't sudden, not really. I'd been building up to it in secret, sketching during lunch breaks, sourcing fabric samples after hours, whispering into my phone in supply closets to talk to vendors. I'd taken exactly 2 days off in 5 years at that corporate design job, and I used both of them to attend a local textile fair and a basic sewing workshop. Everyone at work thought I was burned out. Maybe I was, but deep down, I was just finished with building things for other people that had no meaning. I didn't want to pitch one more sofa in millennial beige to executives who'd never stepped foot in a real home like Grandma's. So I walked into my manager's office, handed in my notice, and walked out into the sunlight with shaking hands. I used what little I had saved, mostly what I'd set aside for a new car, to buy bolts of soft cotton, linen, and thread. I rented a tiny studio space on the edge of town, no bigger than a storage unit, but it had a table, a plug socket, and a window that let in afternoon light. That was enough. The first few weeks felt magical. I stayed up late turning my sketches into real samples, hand-stitched pillow covers, a soft robe with a belt that tied just right, a linen table runner with little embroidery details like Lucille used to add to my dresses. But it wasn't smooth sailing. One supplier sent me fabric in the completely wrong shade, brown instead of cream. Another flaked on a deadline, leaving me stuck with half-finished robes and no lining. I accidentally melted a zipper trying to iron it, and once spent 4 hours fixing a crooked seam only to realize I'd sewn it inside out. I told Lucille I was just freelancing, keeping it light, even when she offered to give me part of her pension to help. I couldn't take her money. This had to be mine, built with my own hands. Every time something went wrong, and things went wrong constantly, I saw her again, sitting quietly on that cold floor in her best holiday sweater while my cousins clinked their glasses. That image kept me going. When it was time to finally name the brand, it came easily. Lucia Bell. A blend of her name and mine. Not just a tribute, a declaration. This wasn't just about selling linens or robes. This was about putting her love, her care, her dignity, into every single stitch. It was a Saturday morning in early spring when I finally told her. I made us breakfast like always, scrambled eggs, toast, coffee, and mismatched mugs, and we sat on her porch in the morning sun, just like we used to when I was little. The breeze carried that soft, earthy smell of the garden, and for a minute, I almost chickened out. But then I looked at her hands, those same hands that used to sew buttons onto my school shirts, cook meals from nothing, and hold me through every heartbreak I've ever had. I couldn't keep it from her anymore. "Grandma," I said quietly, "I've been working on something." She turned to me, smiling. "You always are, baby." "No, I mean really working. For months. Every night after work, after I quit, I've been sewing, designing, starting a business." Her eyes blinked slow, trying to keep up. I went inside and came back out with a soft linen robe, folded neatly. I laid it on her lap. She ran her fingers over the fabric, confused, until she noticed the stitching on the inside. A small tag that read Lucia Bell. She looked up at me. "Is that me?" I nodded. She didn't say anything for a long time, just stared at the robe, her hand shaking slightly as she touched the seams. Then, out of nowhere, her face crumpled and she started to cry. Not loud or dramatic, just quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks as she looked at something made in her name. "I never thought," she whispered, "that someone would see me like this. Like I mattered." "You've always mattered, Grandma," I said, kneeling beside her. "I just want the world to know it." After that, I showed her everything. My sketches, the branding board, the robes, the throw pillows, the website mock-ups. And then I asked the biggest question of all. "I want you to be the face of the brand. Not a model. Just yourself. You in your garden. You sipping tea. You laughing." She laughed through her tears. "Honey, people don't want to see old ladies like me on packages." "I do," I said. "They just don't know they do yet." She hesitated, but then she nodded. The photo shoot was simple. I borrowed a friend's camera and took pictures of Grandma in her backyard wearing one of the robes, holding a mug of tea, laughing at nothing, brushing her hair back in the wind. No filters. No makeup artist. Just her. Real and radiant. I used those photos for everything. Our tags, the packaging, even our simple website. Then I boxed up the first batch of prototypes and mailed them anonymously to my family. No note. No explanation. Not one of them responded. I didn't have a fancy launch party or an ad campaign. I had a folding table, a banner I printed at home, and a handful of robes, throws, and pillow covers packed in old cardboard boxes. The first time I set up my Lucia Bell booth was at the Saturday Farmers Market downtown. It was wedged between a lady selling beeswax candles and a teenager with handmade dog treats. I draped one of Grandma's robes on a mannequin I'd found at a thrift store and clipped a picture of her to the corner of the table. At first, people just walked by. A few paused, touched the fabric, nodded politely, and moved on. One woman asked if it was a church fundraiser. But then, late morning, an older couple stopped. The woman ran her fingers along the edge of a robe and said, "This feels like my mama's old housecoat." Her husband bought it for her on the spot. They came back the next weekend with two of their friends, who also each bought one. That's when I knew something was happening. It wasn't viral. It was quiet. Whispers between friends. People stopping by asking, "Is Miss Bell here today?" Lucille didn't always come with me, but when she did, she sat in a little folding chair beside the booth, sipping iced tea and chatting with strangers like she'd known them for years. People adored her. They called her Miss Bell, even before I did. One woman brought her cookies. Another brought a sewing kit she thought Grandma might enjoy. About a month in, a woman named Esther stopped by. She didn't say much at first, just looked closely at the stitching, flipped the tags, examined the seams. Then she handed me her card and said, "I ran a boutique here for 30 years. Retired now. But I still know quality when I see it. You ever thought about consignment?" I nearly dropped my water bottle. We met the next day. She agreed to carry a small selection in a local shop she still had ties to. Within 2 weeks, she called me to say we needed to restock. Orders started picking up. Small ones, but steady. A robe here, a set of pillow shams there. Enough to keep me sewing until midnight most nights. My fingers hurt, and my eyes stung, but I didn't care. People were buying comfort, legacy. And Lucille, Miss Bell, was right at the heart of it all. It was bound to happen eventually. One sunny afternoon in Charleston, Aunt Donna was browsing a boutique she frequented, a place full of overpriced candles, silk scarves, and designer tea towels. She was flipping through a rack of robes when she stopped cold. There, on a soft cream-colored tag stitched onto the inside collar, was a picture of Lucille. Her mother, smiling, wearing a robe, sitting on that little porch with a cup of tea. She thought it was a mistake at first. A joke. Maybe someone used a stock photo that just happened to look like Lucille. But then she saw the name, Lucia Bell. And then she saw the logo. That night, she called a family meeting. It wasn't really a request. Just a group text with a time and place and the usual thinly veiled guilt trip. "We need to talk." All of us. We met at Carson's place, modern, cold, all gray marble and glass. I could feel the tension the moment I walked in. Donna stood at the kitchen island, arms crossed, lips pursed like she was about to scold a child for drawing on the walls. Lucille came with me. She walked slow but proud, her cane tapping the tile like a gavel. "I saw your little project," Donna said, not even trying to hide the sarcasm. Imagine my surprise walking into a respectable store and seeing my mother's face slapped on some bathrobe like a supermarket ad. I didn't say anything. "I mean, Hannah," she continued, "using Grandma like that? For profit? It's weird. It's embarrassing. Don't you think you're taking advantage?" That's when Grandma spoke. Calmly, softly, but firm. "I'm not embarrassed," she said. Not one bit. Everyone turned to her. Hannah didn't take anything from me. She gave me something I never had before. She saw me. Not as someone to brush aside, not as someone to pity or keep quiet, but as someone who lived, who made something with her hands, who mattered. Donna tried to interrupt, but Lucille raised a hand. You all had years to show that you valued me. You didn't. You barely looked my way. And now, when someone finally puts meaning to my name, you call it exploitation. She shook her head. No, baby. This is legacy. The room was silent. I looked at Lucille then, not just as the woman who raised me, but as something bigger. A symbol. A voice for every woman like her who had been brushed aside, overlooked, forgotten. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about giving something back that had been stolen a long time ago. Dignity. Honor. Worth. The letters started showing up in thick envelopes, written in careful handwriting. Some were from older women who saw Lucille's face on a tag and said it reminded them of their own mothers or grandmothers or the women who raised them. One woman from Tennessee wrote, "Your robe feels like my childhood kitchen, like cinnamon and humming in safety." Another wrote, "Thank you for making something that reminds the world we're still here, still valuable." Grandma read each one slowly, tracing the words with her finger. She kept them all in a little shoebox under her bed. What began as a few local sales turned into something more. Lucia Bell wasn't just a product anymore. It was a message. That age wasn't something to hide. That comfort could mean more than silk and price tags. That legacy, not logos, was what made something worth passing down. I got invited to speak at a local business expo in Little Rock. I nearly said no, but Grandma insisted I go. I stood in front of a small room of local makers and shop owners and told them what I believed. Real luxury isn't a price. It's a feeling. It's knowing someone made something with love. And that love came from somewhere. A woman from a regional magazine was in the audience. She asked to do a profile on me and Grandma. I agreed, but only if there were no flashy headlines or glamour shots. I wanted it real, just like the brand. Still no website ads, no influencer partnerships, no hashtags. Just word of mouth, printed catalogs, handwritten notes, and fabric that spoke for itself. Then came the phone calls. Carson asked if I needed help with the financial side. Elise suggested we collab, on a line for younger customer. Even Aunt Donna sent me an email saying she was willing to help with branding, since she had an eye for retail. I said no to all of them. Every single one. This wasn't their story to sell. Lucia Bell was built in silence, in the hours they never saw. It came from nights I cried over broken seams, and mornings Grandma made tea while I stitched until sunrise. It came from love, not convenience. From memory, not marketing. And most of all, it came from a woman they never truly saw until the world did. So no, they didn't get a seat at this table. Not anymore. A year later, Christmas came around again. But this time, everything was different. It was held at my place, my first real home, bought with the money from Lucia Bell. A cozy little house just outside town, with big windows and a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon. I decorated it with candles and garlands, and laid the table with Grandma's old china, the kind Aunt Donna once called outdated. They all showed up, one by one. Aunt Donna, Carson, Elise, the whole gang. They brought their usual too loud voices and expensive coats, but there was something different in the air. Softer, like they knew the power had shifted, and they weren't sure how to act now. I didn't go out of my way to be rude, but I didn't try to make anyone comfortable either. I was polite, short, and firm. When Elise fake smiled and told me, "This is such a cute little place," I just said, "Thanks," and walked away. And then Lucille walked in. She wore a deep blue velvet robe we'd made together, her favorite design, lined with quilted satin, and her initials embroidered on the sleeve. Her hair was pinned up just right, and she held her head higher than I'd seen in years. I had one chair that didn't match the others. A tall, soft, custom-upholstered velvet chair with carved arms and brass detailing. I pulled it out at the head of the table. "Here, Grandma," I said. "This one's yours." She sat down slowly, her hands resting on the arms, a small smile forming at the corners of her mouth. No one dared sit before. Dinner went smoothly, filled with polite small talk and cautious glances. Even Aunt Donna stayed quiet for most of it, chewing slowly like every bite was being measured against her pride. After dessert, I stood up and said I had something to give. I walked over to Lucille and handed her a small wooden plaque. On it, etched in gold, were the words, "The matriarch of Lucia Bell, built with love." At first, she just stared at it. Then her hands started to shake. Her eyes filled, and she pressed the plaque to her chest like it was something sacred. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Everyone else went quiet. For the first time in my life, I saw my family actually look at her, see her. Not as background noise. Not as the old lady who always cooked and never complained, but as the woman who built something out of nothing. Lucille dabbed her eyes with a napkin and whispered, "Thank you, baby." I sat down next to her, our shoulders touching, and in that moment, everything settled. Not with noise, not with a fight, but with peace. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Lucille passed away 2 years later. Peacefully, in her sleep, in that same velvet robe she loved so much. She had just finished her morning tea, had looked out the window at the garden and said, "Everything's in its place." And then, just like that, she was gone. Losing her felt like losing my anchor. For days, I moved through the world like it was made of glass. Quiet, careful, empty. But even in the grief, I knew she'd left full of love, of dignity, of the legacy she never expected to have, but earned with every single quiet act of care. Lucia Bell grew faster than I ever imagined. What started as a table at a farmer's market became a national brand. We didn't chase trends. We didn't advertise like everyone else. But people came, drawn by something they couldn't find in stores anymore: truth, warmth, memory. We called it Heritage Comfort, a line of robes, quilts, and linens inspired by the women who held families together with them. And Lucille was always at the center of it, her photo on the tag, her words stitched into the packaging. We fix what's worn. That's where the soul is. But the thing I'm proudest of came later. I started a scholarship in her name, the Lucille Bell Grant, for young women being raised by grandparents. Because I know what it's like to grow up with love, but not much else. And I know how far that love can go when someone believes in you. Every year, we help girls go to school, buy books, chase dreams their families never thought possible. I read their letters sometimes, and I see myself in every one. People always ask me, was this all to get back at them? Your family? And the truth is, maybe at first. But not anymore. Revenge can be loud, angry, explosive. But sometimes the best kind of revenge isn't about hurting people. It's about proving them wrong, not with rage, but with love, with dignity, with legacy. They tried to treat Lucille like she didn't matter, like she was in the way, like her best days were behind her. Now her face is in homes all over the country. And every time someone wraps themselves in one of our robes, they feel what I felt every day growing up: warmth, safety, and the quiet, powerful love of a woman who never stopped giving. What about you? Would you have cut ties like Hannah did, or tried to fix things with a family that never saw your worth? I'd really like to hear your thoughts, so drop them in the comments below. And if real-life stories like this speak to you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss the next one.